Yeah, hi. All, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically, right. So today, yeah, as I said, like we'll be on it's a MicroStrategy architecture. So we'll be focusing on MicroStrategy architecture. So, so this is again very important thing as per like whatever we discussed, right? So everyone, wherever you have doubt, right, you can just ping me or you can just unmute and you can ask me. But today's session is very important for like getting with a continuation to create reports and other things, right? So today you need to be very clear on like whatever concept we discuss. So this is very I say important session as part of MSTR. So in MSTR architecture, so what does this architecture means? So yesterday we tried to create different reports. Like we created a report, and once we have designed that report, like placing that attributes, metrics. So in order to see data, we were clicking on run report. We were clicking on run report. So once you click on run, where it is going, right? So what at all it is doing, right? So basically all these things will be seeing today. So now, so yesterday, so whenever we went into a desktop, right, say MicroStrategy desktop, so there basically we have seen two different project sources, and that particular project sources basically you had one as a two-tier. Basically I'll show you in tomorrow's session. So two-tier architecture. So in MSTR we have different architectures, like say two-tier, then we have three-tier architecture, and then you do have a four-tier architecture. So what is this all architecture, and in this particular architecture, so what is that we need to learn basically is in all this particular architecture we need to understand. So what are the components? So first thing, vertically, what is the components in it, and then we need to understand, so what is the purpose of that particular components. So when I say two-tier, so what components I'll have and how that particular components is going to behave. Each component helps in what. Then what is a three-tier and how it helps. And then four-tier, and what are the components in four-tier and what is the purpose of each component. So this is what we'll be discussing as part of our today's session. So just we'll just have a presentation. So okay, so now basically, so okay, so now when you look at this specific thing here, right, so these are two-tier, and then we have a three-tier, and then a four-tier. So all four architecture. So we'll discuss about each architecture in detail in the coming slides, but as of now just try to focus, like first before we get into the details of it, so just try to look at this one. So basically, so this particular, wherever you see a blue dark line, right, so that indicates it is a ODBC connection. So wherever you have database, right, so for every database you need to have ODBC connection. You need to have ODBC connection. So whatever this line you see, right, so this indicates, so this line here we say it is a legend, and this legend indicates it is an ODBC connection, open database connectivity. So if you look at this one, there is a component called metadata and there is a component called warehouse. We'll just try to understand what is metadata So we already discussed what is warehouse. So, and this particular interface, you know already, yesterday we have started with MicroStrategy developer. So fine. And you look at this particular architecture when compared to two-tier architecture. So when you look at this architecture here, you have a metadata, you have warehouse, and instead of one developer interface, you could see developer interfaces, and then you do have one additional component, except like this particular developer metadata warehouse, right? You see one additional component here in between, which is called MicroStrategy iServer or Intelligent Server. MicroStrategy Intelligence Server. And if you look at this one, here you see one extra connection here. So apart from that particular dark blue line, so you did see a dotted black color line. So this particular thing indicates it is a TCP IP connection. So this is a server. From the server to your interface, you need to have this particular connection, TCP IP connection. And apart from that, so you have like next one is a 4-tier connection. In the 4-tier connection, so you do have say the same thing. So MicroStrategy Intelligence Server, the same thing. So the additional thing at the top, if you look at here, so there is a web component. So there is a web server. So you'll have this particular web server wherein users will use it. We'll discuss all these things in detail. But from iServer, so if you look at this one, from iServer, you have a connection to developer. But if you look at here, the iServer is a key thing, because if you look at here, it is connecting to developer as well as to your web server like Google web server, Microsoft web server. Similarly, you do have in MicroStrategy a MicroStrategy web server. So this is a web server. So this particular web server and above web server, now you see different pages. And you know in any web, so you'll have the pages defined on the HTTP connection. So there are three different types of connections you'll see. One is ODBC, then TCP IP, and then you see this particular red color dotted indicates a HTTP connection. So now based on this, right, so whatever you are seeing here, right, so here, so there are from this particular 2-tier to a 3-tier, you see one additional component as MicroStrategy Intelligence Server, and from 3-tier to 4-tier, you see one additional component as a web server. So whenever we say tier, right, so an additional component, there will be an component, that's it. In this case, say iServer, and in the 4-tier you have a web server. So first thing we'll slowly understand like each one of this. So the developer developer interface, metadata, then already you know warehouse. We'll just brush up again on the warehouse skills. Then what is this iServer, what is this particular web server, we'll just discuss in detail. So by end of the session today, so we need to understand, okay, whenever a developer runs in 2-tier, where the control goes. Whenever a developer runs a component in 3-tier, so where the control goes. And in case of users, users will not run their report from the developer interface. Instead, any user or any client business user, they are going to run from different browsers, right? So you open internet browser, Google browser, particular browser, they are going to use an URL in order to run the report. So when they run this particular report, where the control is going, what all things are happening, so all these things. So by end of the session, we should be good on 2-tier, 3-tier and 4-tier connection. So at least on this particular slide, so just remember only few things. In MicroStrategy, we'll have different architectures, 2-tier, 3-tier and then 4-tier architecture. So in case of 2-tier architecture, we'll have one MicroStrategy developer connected to metadata and then a warehouse. So these are the three components. When you go to 3-tier, you'll have an additional component as intelligence server. So when you go to 4-tier, you'll have one more additional component, that is a web server. And in real time, right? So which connection we'll be using? So Pradeep, can you go on mute like if you're not talking? We could hear you or not. Okay. And so this architecture feel in real time, I mean, which architecture we'll be using in real time? Okay, so we'll be using 4 tier. Okay, so it depends on number of users, everything according to requirement. Okay, so what do you feel? Actually, there are only 3 numbers here, A, B, C, 2, 3 and 4. So whatever, say for example, I say 100 users or like I say 10,000 users, and then what will be your answer then? So you take any small application, basically in that small application, right, you may have 100 users. Okay, so just try to understand here. So this particular connection here, we don't use in real time. So this is only for our practice or something. So we use 2 tier. And 3 tier also the same thing. I mean, generally you work on it. But in any real-time project, whatever project you work, right, that project should have a 4 tier connection, because whatever reports we are developing, okay, we are developing the reports in developer interface here and here. But as I said, end user will not come to developer and then run the report. They have to access the reports online or else on the web. So in order to have that web connection, right, so definitely you require this 4 tier connection. So in any project, you'll have 4 tier architecture, because in any project, be it 10 users, be it 50 users, be it 500, be it 1000, 10,000, 70,000. So in any project, if that set of users has to access their reports or dashboard, it has to be there in a 4 tier, because this is where you'll have the web server. You'll have the web server. So any questions, anyone, like in real time? So we'll be using the 4 tier. So everyone agree? Okay, fine. So moving on to the, say, I mean, so next thing, so we'll discuss about each component in detail now. So do users access MicroStrategy using browsers? Yes, they do. So because they cannot install this developer software, and one thing basically when you look at users, it is like nowadays not required to have a system with high configuration to install that entire MicroStrategy software. So wherever the user goes, right? So if you look at the demo sessions we discussed, MicroStrategy can be accessed in mobiles. It can be accessed in your tabs. It can be accessed over the web. So in order to see that particular data over web, right? So basically, yes, I mean, say to see data, I mean MicroStrategy, so users will not log into develop seeing the data on their the web. So, different way, that's it. So if you look at here, so we have that MicroStrategy desktop. So this is the older name I said. So MicroStrategy desktop or developer interface. So this particular MicroStrategy desktop or developer interface you have. So in this particular interface, you are going to design your reports. Yesterday we connected to MicroStrategy developer. So what we have done basically, we went in new report and then we try to bring up that particular attributes and metrics on top of the report. So in case of MicroStrategy desktop, what we do basically is we are going to design the reports. We create various objects like public, schema, configuration, whatnot, any type of objects you are going to create in the MicroStrategy developer interface. So once you create this particular report, right? So yesterday, after designing the report, after creating the report, you clicked on execute button. So as soon as you have clicked on execute button, so what happens basically is first step, the control, right, goes to metadata. The first step, what it does basically is the control goes to metadata. And from metadata, so we'll discuss on metadata. You also like over here, a lot of people might have heard metadata. So we'll just discuss on that point. So first the control goes to metadata, and from metadata, so again the control goes back to data warehouse. In the data warehouse, you know, right, it will have the data. So the tables and then the data. Like say for example, when we say category, electronics, books, movies, music. So that information is going to present in the data warehouse. The sales information, like how many entire table and the corresponding data is going to present in the warehouse. So from the data warehouse, it collects that data, whatever data is required for your report, and then it displays on the report. It displays on the report. So in case of two-tier connection, how the flow will be there basically is, so you'll have MicroStrategy desktop, the control goes to metadata, and in the metadata, what it does in metadata we'll discuss in a minute. So it goes to metadata, from metadata it goes to seen yesterday in the report, right? So that data will be present in the data warehouse. So it collects that particular data and then it displays on the report. It displays on the report. So so in two-tier, you'll have three components. Just remember, developer, metadata, data warehouse. So why the number 2? When I see 3 basically is, so whenever you count this tier, right, so you just exclude your data warehouse in it. So apart from data warehouse, how many components we have basically is, we'll have metadata and then we'll have MicroStrategy desktop. So when you have this metadata and MicroStrategy desktop, right, so metadata is considered as a tier 1 and your MicroStrategy desktop is considered as a tier 2. So hence we say this as a two-tier architecture. Two-tier architecture, and in two-tier architecture, these are the components. And this interface, you know, where we are developing the reports, designing objects, from this particular interface to metadata. Metadata is a database, data warehouse is a database. To have connectivity to any database, you need to have ODBC connection. You need to have ODBC or DSN connection. So this is where the connection will be established, and how it will be established also we'll see as part of our architect. So when we'll also create metadata, we establish this connection, all these things we'll do practically during our sessions. So on the components, so just remember this one, because when we go to other tier, one component gets added. When we move on to other tier, another component gets added. So just remember these three components. And when you look at this specific thing, so in case of two tier, how the execution will be there is, so whenever user, you for example yesterday you logged into developer interface. In the developer interface, this is where the user you'll have. So this user in the developer interface, assume this user is you who connected to developer interface, and in the developer interface you have created a report and then you have hit on the run button. As soon as you have hit the run button, then the control went to metadata connection. So you have this connection. Using this connection, it is going to MicroStrategy metadata. So what is this particular MicroStrategy metadata means? It is also a database. So I just want to know, input from, whoever joined, right? So what is this metadata? I hope like probably you have heard this metadata many number of times. So just in short, right? Can you tell me? So okay, I was expecting that data about data. Okay, so apart from data about data, so what else we can say about metadata? Just say we can take some example, and then from there we can understand. Because in an entry, if someone asks what is metadata, if we say data about data, so they'll ask us to elaborate. So to understand that point, so can I mean, you provide a more explanation on that. Data about data, fine, perfect, as per definition, but little more. The definition of objects that we create, okay, fine, perfect. Then any other inputs? It summarizes basic information of data. Better data you want to share your particular knowledge, you are welcome. So except like two Kirans and then Tarun, right? So everyone over the, I mean, session, you haven't heard metadata earlier. Where master data is stored. Okay. Okay, so of all things, right, basically, is the correct thing basically, right? So you said different points, different persons. So data about data is a standard definition, that is fine. But the correct definition, right, is this one. So the definition of the objects that we create. So what this metadata does basically. So in order to get into, I mean, understand more about this point, the definition of objects that we create. So in order to understand that, fine. So in case of MicroStrategy, assume like you created any object. Yesterday I said in MicroStrategy we have different types of objects, right? So what are the different objects we have in MicroStrategy? So what are different objects we have in MicroStrategy? Schema, then public, and what else? Admin. For admin I said a different word. Public, schema, and one more thing. Configuration, yeah, perfect. So public objects, schema objects, yeah, thanks. Public, schema, configuration, three type of objects. So in this particular interface, in the developer interface, you as a developer, you are going to create public, schema, and configuration. So whatever object you create, right, that definition is going to be stored in the metadata. So what it stores basically is, so whatever object you create, be it public, schema, configuration, all objects come and store in the metadata. Fine. So then what is difference between metadata and then between data warehouse? In the data warehouse also, whatever columns you create, right, that information also will be present in the data warehouse. So then what is the difference between metadata and between data warehouse means? So in case of data warehouse, it is going to have the table structure as well as the physical data. Whereas here it will have only the definition. So what does that mean basically, right? So we'll just get into details of that one. So say for example, now you have a metadata. And then what is the difference between metadata and data warehouse? Let's try to understand it. So the control is going to metadata, fine. So first step, the control is going to metadata in two-tier connection. And in case of a three-tier connection, it is going to data warehouse. Okay, till this point it's fine. So in metadata, what it contains basically, right? It stores say definition of all objects. In MSTR, when I say all, public, schema, and configuration, store definition of all objects. So here you'll have that specific, in case of data warehouse, so it stores all tables and data. Data basically it stores the physical data, means the actual data, like say for region, you have south, southeast, all these things, right? That is what like the physical data. So in case of metadata, what it stores means stores definition of all object. What does that mean basically is, so now yesterday you created a report. Say for example, you do have a report like this. You created a report one, some demo report you have created yesterday as well. So in that particular demo report, what you have placed region, then you have placed employee, and then you have placed revenue, and then you have placed profit. Assume 4 different columns, 2 attributes and 2 metrics which you have placed on the report. So once you have placed these particular columns on the report and then you have hit on that particular run button, so first it went to metadata. In metadata what it did I'll tell you, but now basically before I say that particular point, so one input from you, all you, is basically, so just tell me when I say revenue or when I say profit, when I say revenue or when I say profit, when I say employee, when I say region. So what do you feel? Will that particular region, employee, revenue and profit will present only in one single table or they are present in multiple tables? In data warehouse we say, right? So in data warehouse I have like 120 different tables. In my project I do have 120 different tables. So what do you feel basically? So region column, employee, revenue, profit. So are they going to present only in one single table or they are going to exist in multiple tables? So obviously they are going to exist in the multiple tables. Fine, perfect. So they exist in multiple tables. Right, good. So when they exist in multiple tables, right? So now let's take our general example. Say for example, I have, say for example, a textbook, and in that particular textbook, right? Say I have, some particular, paragraph or some particular heading, right? So that particular thing is getting repeated in like, most of the pages or something. But again, so in my textbook, I want to go to a specific topic. I want to go to a specific topic. Then what you do? So I have a textbook and then I have to go to a specific topic. So what do you do basically? What will be your approach to get to that topic in a textbook? Okay, so you make use of index, perfect. So first you go to index page, and in the index page you will collect the page number. You will collect the page number and directly you go to that page. Okay, assume for a minute you don't have that index page. You don't have that index page. Then what you do? So you don't have at the starting or back, anywhere you don't have that index page. Then what we need to do in order to get to a specific topic? If no index is there, then what is that way we use in order to get to a specific concept or specific topic? So you don't read that book, go to each page. Okay, so you have to open each page, then check whether the topic is there or not. First 10 pages, 20 pages, then it will be tough basically. So if you don't have index, it will take a lot of time for you to get to a specific concept. But when you have index, so then it will be very faster to navigate to that page. Similarly here, also the same thing. So this particular database, data warehouse, assume that, so this data warehouse is where your chapter, or like say for example you go to a specific topic, you find data related to it, right? So here it contains that particular data, your data warehouse, whereas your metadata is going to store similar information like indexing information. Say for example you have a revenue and where this particular revenue is present, right? So where this particular profit is present. So it is present in multiple tables, but as per your requirement, okay, this particular region, what it contains the pointers. Okay, region, so is present in, different tables, but it tells to the system that, okay, go to LU region table. So which table it has to select, that we'll understand as part of our schema session. But as of now, So just remember that in your metadata, it collects that object definition means, okay, region means go and hit this table. Employee means, say for example, LU underscore, go and hit employee table. And in case of revenue, say go and hit, say for example, uh, region, say for example, EMP sales table. And in this particular case also, the profit also is present in the same table. So this information, okay, it goes to metadata. In the metadata, it collects this information, okay, region where it has to present, employee where it has to present. So where all these are present, it is going to collect that definition. So here no data, region, south, north, that will not be present in metadata. In metadata, it will just store, okay, region where it is present, revenue where it is present, only that information. Similar like your index, how it contains the page number, here it contains which table information. Similar to your page number, here the table. And then, so this not only region, employee, revenue, profit. So here region is an attribute which is a schema object, and then metric is a, public object. You create user group configuration. So any object, that definition it collects, and then it goes to data warehouse. In the data warehouse, it gets to the specific tables, retrieves the data, and then it displays on the report. It displays on the report. So now this is what you need to understand is, so first you run your report. So in your report, whatever object it contains, public, schema, configuration, first the control goes to metadata. In the metadata, it is going to collect the object definitions, public, schema, configuration, all object definition. And once it collects that particular object definition, then the control goes to data warehouse. In the data warehouse, it collects that actual data, and then it brings that particular data and then displays on the report. So is that fine, everyone? Clear on the flow? Because you understand this, it is as similar as for 3-tier and 4-tier. Only one extra component will have, that's it. So any questions on this one? How the execution flow, it will be there in 2-tier. So you run report where the control is going and what it is doing there, and from there where it is going, then what it is doing, and then how it is coming on top of your report. So any question on that one? Are you good on this particular diagram? So how about others? Apart from Tarun. Okay, fine. So now, yeah, perfect. So now, because this is what the base, and then from there we get in. So generally, again a simple question. So which database will be of huge size? Metadata size, data warehouse. Yeah, pretty simple question. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So as per interview, what is the other question you can expect basically is, say for example, you have your MicroStrategy metadata, and then you have your data warehouse. So the question they'll ask you is, can we databases warehouse? So what does that mean? Like, let me put in other words. So say, can I use SQL Server database? SQL Server database, which is Microsoft product. Can I use it for metadata to store my metadata information? And can I use Oracle, which is like again product of Oracle? So can I use Oracle database for my data warehouse? The question is, for MicroStrategy metadata, I want to use one database, and for data warehouse, I want to use another one. As per our example, I'm telling that metadata on the SQL Server and data warehouse on the Oracle. So what do you feel? Okay, so I got 3 yes, and yeah, perfect. The answer is also yes, you can have it. So yeah, only the thing is you need to have this connectivity. So once you have this ODBC connectivity, here you will have that driver, SQL Server driver to connect to this one. And here you will have Oracle driver to connect to database. So it is not like guaranteed that both of them should be on the same database. So this can be on different, this can be on different. In general, in any project you take, it will be different only because here the size is very low, for which they prefer like small databases, and here the size should be very large and they prefer like bigger databases like big data or Hadoop, Metadata, NetEase and so on. Right, perfect. So moving on to the next step. So next again, right, so all this will be simple from now. So only the thing you need to understand the basics is done. So now if you look at this one, this is a 3-tier architecture. So in case of 3-tier architecture, so you see here like in 2-tier, only one interface, means only one person can work on that. So if you look at 3-tier connection, so you can have multiple users connecting to this server, and then you have this particular interface. So once you have this server and then you have this particular interface, MicroStrategy desktop or developer interface, the connection between them should be TCP IP connection. So you need to have this one. So this is again taken care by administrator. You need not worry, but just remember you need to have a TCP IP connection to your desktop and between iServer. So these two has to interact each other. To interact each other, they should be having this connection. And as per the specification, because it need to have this ODB server to interface to database. So definitely ODBC connection. And from a server to interface this one. And from a server to TCP IP only. That we'll see in the next one. And from that server to web pages, you'll have that HTTPS. Right. So now basically in this particular scenario, just try to understand here. So here, whenever you run any report, so any questions? Okay. So whenever you run any report here in MicroStrategy desktop, or like you have multi users, like a lot of users can run it. So once a different users runs that particular reports from their interface, first instead of going to your metadata, the control is coming to intelligent server. So what this intelligent server does basically is, so first thing, there are multiple users who logs in, and that particular users, right, when they log in, so this particular server is going to take care of balancing your load. Means say for example at a time 100 jobs comes in. So out of that 100 jobs or 100, I mean different users are executing. So which one has to run first, which one has to run second, and so on. So that information again is taken care by your server. So it is going to prioritize your job. And how this prioritization means, for every report you run, we set up as an admin, we can set up some priority. Okay, this report means we put priority 1. The other report means priority 50. So whichever report you run at the same time, and priority 1 will run faster when compared to the priority 1, because all the resources will be allocated to the priority 1 report. So in this way, for all reports, we set a limit, right? Or admin will set up a limit for the report, and that particular prioritization check is taken care by your server. So it checks, okay, if multiple users are running, which report has to run, which report has to run second, and so on. So that is taken care by intelligent server. Apart from that, so this particular intelligent server, okay, fine. This intelligent server, what are additional advantages basically is, so when you have intelligent server, you can have the connectivity to web server. So in case of 2-tier connection, you cannot connect your desktop to web server. So in order to have integration with web server, right, you want to see data on web. So you need to have a iServer. You need to see data on your mobile. So you need to have that mobile server integrated with iServer. So you want to see data on the Microsoft Office products like Excel, PowerPoint and so on. So that particular Microsoft Office also you can integrate with iServer. So you can integrate different components like web server, mobile server, Microsoft Office to the iServer so that you can view the reports on those interfaces. And then it is going to take care of job prioritization as well as the security. When you log in, so what level of security you have, so whether you have an access to connect to metadata, data warehouse. In data warehouse you may have access to few tables or like not for other tables, or only select access not for insert. All this security checking again is taken care by your intelligent server. And apart from that, when I discuss something called statistics, right? So I said in MicroStrategy we have a component called Enterprise Manager which helps in the statistical analysis. So that statistical analysis is also helpful with this particular iServer only. So your Enterprise Manager also will be connected to to the intelligent server and collects that particular statistics. And apart from that, say for example, currently, assume for a minute, you have a web server, and in the web server there are currently 20,000 users assume in your project. But over the time, your business went well, and what happened basically is the number of users has increased from 20,000 to 50,000. And what is happening basically is whenever the request, like there are a lot of concurrent user, parallel users, or like the users who are like logging in at the same time, trying to execute the reports at the same time. So now the burden on your iServer has been increased, and basically what happened basically is now all the reports, I mean the response time is less. So in that particular case, what we can do is, so we can go for a concept called clustering. So what does that mean is, so when you have one single server, so what is happening, all 50,000 requests are hitting one server. So instead of this one, you can have multiple iServers like iServer 1, iServer 2, iServer 3. It is costly because instead of maintaining one server, you need to maintain three servers, and then between this particular three servers, right? So all three servers will be replicated or cloned. Means whatever definition you have here, that will be cloned into two. The same thing will be cloned into three. So when you have three intelligent server, which is called clustering as per technical thing. So when you have that clustering, so what is advantage is whenever you run any report, right, 50,000 users are running. Now this three server is going to distribute the load 20,000, 15,000, 15,000, and based on that it is going to distribute that load. So once it distributes that load, the performance will be high. The performance will be high. So it is having the intelligent server, you can integrate different components. It also supports clustering, and then it takes care of security, and then it prioritizes the job, right? And also in the intelligent server itself, it is going to have that cache. It is going to have the cache and then intelligent cube. So both cache means, say, consider this is as a hard disk and you have RAM basically. So whatever data exists in RAM, it will be faster. So here also within an intelligent server, if this particular intelligent server space is of, say for example 1 TB or something, so out of which 10 GB of space is allocated for caching assume. So another 10 GB of space is allocated for your intelligent cube assume. So on that lines, what is this cache and then what is this intelligent cube means? So what is cache means? Say for example, you go back to this one. So in this particular two-tier connection, one, it has to go to metadata, data warehouse, and then display the data. So what it does basically is, in order to go to metadata, collect the object definition, then go to data warehouse, collect that actual data, then display on the report. It is taking 2 minutes assume. It is taking 2 minutes. And that same report one on a day will be executed by 100 users assume, by 100 users. Every user run the report, I mean, I've run for the first time in the 8 a.m. and other user has executed at 8:10 a.m. So when he runs that at 8:10 a.m., then again the control goes to metadata data warehouse. For user 2, it takes 2 minutes. You also want to run the same report afternoon. For you also it takes 2 minutes only. So be it other user, be it you the person who runs 5 times. So it is going to take same, 2 minutes for each of your run. So but whereas in case of cache, once you have cache, your frequently executed report or recently executed reports will store in the cache. So what is advantage of cache means, if the same report any user 2 runs or user 1 runs for the second time, it goes to simply cache. It doesn't go to metadata data warehouse. It stores the data there only in the cache, and it gets data from cache, which now instead of 2 minutes, now it is going to bring data into 2 seconds or 5 seconds maximum. So once the data it fetches from cache, it will be very faster. Or similar the case with intelligent cube. So when we have, that is a big concept, intelligent cube. So just remember that intelligent cube also acts as cache, which is helpful for improving the performance. So what is different between cache cube? So that we'll have an hour session on that particular thing. But having intelligent server, it checks your security, it checks your prioritization. If the users are increasing, you have a flexibility to cluster your environment. So instead of one server, you can have multiple servers or nodes, distribute the load. And apart from that, it is going to support cache, it is going to support intelligent cube, and then also it is going to support statistical information. And apart from that, say you want a report to be sent to a user to his email, you want to subscribe, in short, you want to subscribe a report to other person email or mobile. That subscription again works when you have intelligent server only, when you have intelligent server. So the intelligent server is going to take several functionalities. It is going to take several functionalities as part of MicroStrategy. So hence it is called from the word itself, right? Intelligent server, right? So from the word itself, so it does various different functionalities. I've highlighted the key points what it is going to do. So and in case of 3-tier, again the same thing. You run from a desktop, the control first goes to intelligent server. If in case iServer crashes, what about caches? So there won't be any specific thing the crash. Basically, if it is a for example, thinking on that particular iServer crash, right? So if you have a 3 nodes means 3 servers, server 1, server 2, server 3. When you have 3 different servers, so on that particular lines, if one of the server goes down, then before it comes up, the load will be balanced on 2 different servers, server 2 and server 3. But assuming only you have one server, you have only one server, only single environment, instead of distributed, you have single environment or single server. So if that single server is going to crash, then what happens basically is you cannot access the reports. People who are connecting to web, who are connecting to developer run reports, everything is going to stop. So what happens basically is, so you keep a backup. You keep a backup of every day. You keep a backup of every day means, say you are going to store the backups. So the metadata backup copy you are going to store. And once you store that particular metadata backup copy, so once your server goes down, so then admin is going to stop that server or like reconfigure that server. So once that server is up, they are going to copy that backup, the metadata backup, whatever they took as part of yesterday night, that particular backup they are going to restore. Once they restore, now all the service will be available. So if a server goes down or if a server crashes, you cannot work on anything. And generally there will be an admin who is going to take care of all this information. He monitors your iServer very closely. What is the size that is happening? So if there are unwanted files, they are going to delete it. And in your server, they maintain, okay, whenever it reaches 70% of space, it is going to trigger a mail to all the administrators, showing that alert. Like say your space is 70%, so just delete all the older files, or make use of this one. So all these things is going to be monitored by your admin. But if it goes down, if no one will access, during that one. So we call, something called outage in real time. So we will notify every user that it went down and we are working on it. And then once it comes up, we restore the complete project from a backup. So every day we store the backup, and if it goes down today, from today night or yesterday night, whatever backup we took, we are going to restore the complete data into our thing. So no information will be lost, even though server gets crashed or server goes down. So if we lose caches or report caches have some disadvantage, right? So first of all, let me tell you, in whatever you have read, the server will not go down. If at all it goes down, then definitely caches will go. But again, when the first user runs the report, right? When you run the report for first time, it is going to cache it. For the first user, it takes 2 minutes. And for the subsequent users, right? Again, it comes up in 5 seconds or something. That's it. So that you cannot say as disadvantage. That server crash will not happen in any project. If that is the case, the admins are not working or they are not in their particular project, right? And you say about the cache getting deleted, so that is not a big deal, because if you take in a two-tier connection, what happens basically is, in case of a two-tier connection, you are running report 100 times. Total it is taking 200 minutes for single report alone. In your project it is taking 200 minutes. But when you use cache for one report, it initially executed 2 minutes. On its subsequent run, it took only 5 seconds. It took only 5 seconds. So now you take that 100 into 5, 500 seconds, which comes closely to maximum 10 minutes. So on that lines, now the where is 200 minutes and where is like 12 minutes basically. So you're having caches, it is going to improve your performance. Okay, fine. So you have a desktop, and from desktop the control goes to server, and in the server it checks whether the data is cached or not. If it is cached, it brings the data on top of your report. If it is not cached, then it goes to metadata, collects object definition, then comes back to server, then goes to data warehouse, and then gets to data warehouse, collects the data, displays on the report. So this is again straightforward. Only the thing here, having this, it does like various functionalities, that is on the three-tier connection. Does the cache store just the data or the query execution path? So it stores everything. It stores the data as well as the query execution. It stores the data. Whatever copy you have, right? You executed some report, and that entire copy will be stored in it. Okay. Then moving on to the next one. But the next user can have a different filter, fine. So if the user has a different filter, that all things we'll say as part of our course. But again, if that particular different users has a different filter, then the report again goes to data warehouse. It doesn't bring from the cache, because you're running for south region. That south region combination itself is going to store in cache. If a person runs for north region, it again goes for the first run to data warehouse, then that particular report will be cached. How does cache helps basically? So to answer your question, say all reports will not be prompted in a first scenario. If at all a report is prompted, basically you can have a schedule to have what combination is morely used by the users, and you can have that particular report cached, so that all the south managers who runs the report for south, for them it helps. And there are say thousands of users who runs only report for south, and say there might be hundreds of users who runs for north. So for all that 1,000 users, instead of running report every time to hit data warehouse, right, it takes 1,000 into 2 minutes. And in case of cache for south managers, it takes 1,000 into 5 seconds. That's it. So there will be a big difference on the time it takes on the daily stats. Cache helps for same reports of same filters. Yes. it does that one. Yeah. Right. So now moving on to the next stuff basically. So once you move on to the next stuff, so in that particular scenario, you do have MicroStrategy web as an additional component. That's it. Rest everything same. MicroStrategy web is an additional component. So having this web server, right? So what is advantages? So to this particular web server, all your users, right? So you just log in to any particular web page, right? So that particular web page has to connect to a web server. You log in Gmail, so there should be a web server. You log into Facebook, there should be Facebook web server and so on. So here also same thing basically. So you log in to any web page, you can access your MSTR report. So all your users using some URL, right? They log into some browser, be it Internet Explorer, Chrome, Mozilla. So based on, there will be some standards. Basically, it will be Internet Explorer, but again, some projects they use Mozilla and so on. But assuming, so Internet Explorer, you are a user, you see the reports by logging into Internet Explorer. So once you log into URL and then you run a report, first the control comes to web server, and in the web server there will be something called LDAP server. So this LDAP is again one additional step for checking up your authentication. Authentication means your, like, whether you are a valid user or not. A lot of people log into the server. So in that particular thing, so whether you are valid user or not, so that particular thing has to be checked in this particular server. This server is going to maintain your ID. Say once you join any project, you'll be assigned an ID, and once you have that specific ID, right, so it is going to check whether that ID exists in the server. If yes, then only it allows you to browse through all these things. If your ID is not valid, ID or password, from here only, even the burden will not be on your iServer. The control directly comes back telling invalid user ID, password, you don't have access, so whatnot, all things. So once you run a report, first it goes to web server, from web server it goes to LDAP server, and in the LDAP server it is going to check your authentication, what level of access you have. From there it goes to your MicroStrategy intelligence server, and in the intelligence server, right, so again from iServer, again the same thing. It goes to metadata, it goes to data warehouse, and then populates the data in your web page. So on your web page, you can see the data which is pulled out from the data warehouse. Only one additional step is you will have a web server, and between web server to your web pages, there will be a HTTPS connection. And moving on to say, okay, sorry. So other things I've put in a different thing basically. So this is all things. Basically what does that mean is, so whenever you are an end user, so if you look at this particular top here, so this is a MicroStrategy desktop, or else at the top you have a mobile. So whenever you want to see, like to your earlier question, so what you have asked, like whether we can see reports on web, yeah, this is what answers it. So if you look at this one, so you can have a mobile server, and then you can access your MSTR reports on iPhone, iPad, BlackBerry, or else you can use any of your laptop or your desktop, and from that particular desktop and that particular laptop you can use basically a Microsoft Office, or basically any of the portal. Means you can connect to internet and then you can use any portal as URL to connect it, which is a web, or you can use your desktop. Like in the Windows, you have Windows desktop wherein you can use that one. So you can use any of this particular thing, whatever is there at the top, right? So these are the list of the things. You can browse from desktop, you can browse from portal or internet, you can browse through mobile, any report, and whatever information you require, right, that information you look, it is present at the bottom. So it might be whatever data that is required, that might be present in databases, that might be present in the cubes. We'll discuss about cubes in detail in a coming session. And then it might be present in any transactional applications. As I said, even MicroStrategy is capable to pull data from operational or like transactional systems, OLTP systems, or you have some particular data which is present on the website, an external file. So even you can use that one. So all this you can use as a sources, and between this particular databases and between your interface wherein you can access the report, there will be MicroStrategy intelligence server. This is another key feature. And apart from that, above your intelligence server, it has to have an integration to web server to connect to this component. It need to have an integration to mobile server to connect to iPhone, iPad and BlackBerry. And apart from that, these are like set of developer tools, like you can use your designer, like desktop or designer or developer tool. You can use MicroStrategy web, you can use MicroStrategy architect. All these things we'll see. You have seen desktop, but we'll see web and then architect. SDK is not our thing. SDK is a software development kit. So this requires expertise knowledge on Java.NET. So this particular interface, this particular tool, basically it is used to change the look and feel of the tool. So the MicroStrategy, whatever developer tool you are looking, the look and feel, right, that is built using custom plugins of Java and .NET. In order to modify that, you require this particular tool SDK, and there will be a separate designation MSTR SDK which fits a Java and .NET developer. So this is not our scope, and this we discussed basically. Enterprise manager for statistical information, and then command manager, as I said, automating certain script, creating bulk objects. This is used for migration from development to QA production. This is used for automating the unit testing. So day before yesterday, so we have seen all these particular components. Apart from this, we seen a system manager which creates a, which is not listed here. System manager is a product which is used for creating the workflows. So these are the different things, all things put together. So you'll have databases, above databases you'll have server, above server you'll have web, then mobile server, and from here you'll have the connection to your desktop or like to your say internet or web, or else your portals, or else to your mobiles. You'll have an app, MicroStrategy app. Using that particular app, you can just connect to any project. So right, so everyone good with this? If yes, I have like 10 more minutes, I'll just complete the one other stuff. Okay, fine. So now moving on to the next screen, the last screen for the day. So there's another key thing. Developers cannot directly to IS write. Developers means basically if you are a user or you are a developer, be it whatever you are. So these are the physical connections basically. These are the physical connections, and whenever you run any report, right, you run a report in developer and automatically you are running a report in 3-tier, it has to go through the server itself. It has to go through the server. So you are a developer, it connects to server. You are a client, you are a user who runs the report, 4-tier connection. Web server again, you'll have a connection to intelligence server. Only in 2-tier you don't have that iServer component, hence the control will not go to iServer. But in all other cases, you are a developer, you run report in 3-tier. You are a developer, you can run report on 4-tier. So you are a developer, when you run the report, it goes to iServer. Developers cannot directly connect to IS, right? Means they can connect. No one can directly run the report on IS. Instead, not web server. So web server basically is, you can use web server because a report in developer, fine, but they see in the web only. So as part of your validation, you need to run the report in the 4-tier connection or in the web. You will also have access to web. You log into web and you see whether the report, whatever you have developed, is working fine in the web or not. So when we change in any tier, does it change in any other? Like it automatically change? So Tarun, I mean, so these are different architectures we have. As part of project, we take only one architecture. That will be a 4-tier architecture. So we don't shift between architectures. Like say, initially any project cannot be on 2-tier or it cannot be on 3-tier. The reason basically is we cannot have 2-tier, 3-tier is any project you take, right? That project will have business users, and that business users has to see report on the web or else on their mobile. So for which every project you take, it will be initially in the 4-tier, and throughout your project also it will be 4-tier. It will not be degraded through T-tier or a 2-tier. So throughout your project you'll be working on a 4-tier connection. So is that clear, Tarun? So does it change in other, or like it automatically change? So it doesn't change because everything will be on a 4-tier from starting. Tarun, I'm expecting a reply from you because yeah, you asked a question.
No, actually, my question is, if in case like if you change anything in two-tier architecture, so there will be in three-tier we have intelligence server, right? So if
Right.
you change any in MicroStrategy desktop in three-tier, so does it change in the four-tier MicroStrategy
Right. Tarun,
desktop?
forget about 2-tier, 3-tier, all this we are learning because in MicroStrategy we have that. But when you take any real-time project, you'll have only the 4-tier connection. You don't have 3-tier, you don't have 2-tier. Okay, if you say you have a 2-tier, you have a 3-tier, and then you have 4-tier. You change something in 3-tier, it doesn't impact in the 4-tier. So you created a report in 3-tier, it doesn't show up in 4-tier. You create a report in 2-tier, it doesn't show up in 4-tier because all these are different connections. All these are different connections. But again, stating that in an interview they'll ask you 2-tier, 3-tier. Once you go any project, always you'll have the 4-tier connection wherein you'll have all the components. Because during development we have a fat line, so we don't connect through web server. Sorry, I mean, Kiran, can you elaborate your question? I mean, so what does a fat client means? I didn't get that question. We do development using the install product rather than. So we do development in the developer only. But once you do the developer, whatever report you develop in the developer tool, the same report can be accessed on the internet for browser basically. Say for example, so here if you look at this one, I create a report, or you as a developer, you are creating a report. So let me explain that. So in the developer tool, you are creating some report. Whatever report you create here, right? That same report you don't create in web, you don't create anywhere else. You create only one copy of report in the desktop. You as a developer, you connect to this tool. Like yesterday we have connected to developer, and in the developer tool, you will create a report. And once you create this report here, the same report will be accessed using this particular connection. You see a connection here. Using this connection, it can be accessed in the web server, or else you have a mobile server. The same report, whatever you are creating in the desktop, can be accessed in the mobile server. So whatever in the Microsoft Office you connected, so the same report, the report will be only one. The same copy of report can be accessed by different devices, But bottom line, you create report at only one place. that is a MicroStrategy desktop, and you as a developer, you create a report here, you validate your report here whether everything is coming correctly or not, but you also ensure that the same report is working on a web page. You will have an access to web page as a developer. You log into web page, you are going to test here, and as a same developer you do have an access to connect to mobile, and you connect to mobile and you see okay how the users are looking, because on your developer you see some of the information is getting displayed and here the complete information is not displaying, so it will be very tough. So hence you will be provided with mobile or you will be provided with an iPad, so wherein whatever report you develop, you are going to test where the user is running that report and ensure, but you don't create a separate report in mobile, separate report in a web, and so on. But is developer user type is different from a business user. What does that mean? Developer user type means? Are they all different user types? User types means it depends on your the level. I mean, once you join in, right? So in any project, basically you will be assigned a developer. There will be a business users who will have access only to web. There will be developers who can access here. There will be an architect who has a different role. There will be a, I mean, different set of users who will be having a different things. Business user is the end client. Yes, developer is one who develops the report, and business users is the end client. And business users will have different level of access, and the developers will have different level of access. Okay, then moving on to then the last thing basically. So this again basically will take 5 minutes extra today. So just try to focus here. So this is very simple and then very key thing basically. So we'll just concentrate. I want only 2-3 points here because tomorrow we need to discuss something called report objects. Before we discuss report objects, this diagram is something important. So you are a client or else you are running a report here basically. So you are end user or a business user who are running a report on any client interface. Client interface means it can be web, it can be mobile. So you are just running that report. First the control we discussed, it comes to iServer. Now we are saying internally in iServer what all things basically it can have. So one thing, as I said, it will have a space basically for your cache. So basically first the control comes to this resolution server and basically the object server. So all these things you can skip, no need of remember all things. I'll tell you what are points you need to remember here. So first the control comes here and it checks if that particular object is cached or not. Whatever report we require, all that particular objects are present here. If yes, it is going to bring on top of your report. If that data is not present, then using the metadata server, it goes to metadata. In the metadata, whatever we discussed, it is going to collect the object definition. So once it collects that particular object definition, so then it goes to this report server, and then you have one more cache called as report cache. So what is object cache? What is report cache? Right? These things will have a separate thing during Intelligent Cube and Cache session. We'll get into more details on this one. So during this second, third, fourth step, right? So it just navigates between these components itself. So you run report, it checks in the cache, and then it also collects the data. That's it. But the is from here basically. So from the fifth point, it will be important. So you run a report, assuming no caches for a minute. If it is cache, then it takes from cache. Assuming the data is not present in cache, then in the second step, it comes to metadata. In the metadata, it collects all the object definition. Once it collects all the object definition, the control will pass to this one, which is called a SQL engine. So what is a SQL engine? What is the purpose of SQL engine means? The SQL engine is going to create the SQL. So yesterday you went into SQL view, and in the SQL view you have seen the SQL generated. That particular SQL, right, is generated where means in the SQL engine. So in the SQL engine it is going to create the SQL. So MicroStrategy in SQL engine of a report, whatever SQL you are seeing, right? So that SQL gets created in the SQL engine. So once you have that particular SQL created, then the control will be passed to query engine. So what this query engine basically does is it is going to interact. It is going to interact with the data warehouse. The purpose of query engine is query engine will have a physical connection with your data warehouse. So it goes to data warehouse, it collects the actual data, then it passes to the analytical engine. Then it passes to the analytical engine. So this analytical engine is a key thing again. So say for example on your report, so once you have pulled the data from your database, on top of that particular data, if you require some calculations, like you want to sum up certain values, you want to do some subtotals, you want to do some grand totals, or else you want yesterday, tomorrow we see something called dynamic aggregation, or yesterday we have applied some view filter. If you look at view filter, after execution of a report, we have filtered the data. So whatever like view filter or some OLAP services, grand totals, subtotals, formatting, all these things are done at your analytical engine. So once it is done again through the intelligent server pipeline, it passes the control back again to your interface, any interface you develop. So in short, what I want you to remember out of this basically is once you run a report, if the data is present in cache, then it collects the data from cache, displays on the report. If it is not present, then it goes to metadata, collects the object definition, passes to SQL engine. In the SQL engine, it is going to create the SQL query, and that SQL query, using this query engine, it is going to interact with data warehouse. So from the data warehouse, it collects the data, and that data will be passed into analytical engine, and in the analytical engine it is going to do some additional calculations, any totals, or applying the view filter, or tomorrow we'll see a dynamic aggregation. So all that things gets calculated at the analytical engine and then passes on the report. So tomorrow we'll see in more detail on this analytical engine. So whatever it does, because tomorrow class we need to discuss one or two concepts wherein we'll be using this component. So we'll understand in some more detail on the analytical engine, and we'll see this diagram again once again tomorrow. So yeah, probably I think yeah, we are like 5 minutes past today, so we'll just end our session here. So whatever today we have seen, I say this is very important thing for getting started with tomorrow's session. So you can just first half you can ask me any questions here. So if you don't have any questions, then we'll discuss on the reporting basics tomorrow, whatever reporting basics we require, and post which we'll start with filters from like next session. Right? Okay, then thanks all for your time. When can we expect? We are working on it. Probably it may take another 2-3 days for you to get the videos. Okay then, fine then. Thanks all for your time. Have good night over here, and say good day to persons who joined from Hyderabad. Okay then, bye.